Can you think of a pivotal moment that you really felt, like you said that, oh, I realized within the first year that engineering was not for me?
Yeah, some people, they may be extremely interesting and they solve a lot of tech.
Placement queues, government exams, and billion-dollar startup dreams to reimagine education from its roots. What happens when education stops being a race and starts becoming a way to build a better self, a better society, and a better country? Welcome to Inspired, the podcast that brings you the inspiring stories and transformative journeys of education leaders shaping the future. I'm your host, Ankur Gupta, and today's guest didn't just build a university, he's building a movement. Sahil Aggarwal, co founder and CEO of Rishi University, is one of the youngest education entrepreneurs in India. But his vision is deeply civilizational, spiritual, and future forward. Today, we don't just talk about degrees or employability, we talk about impact, about identity, about the silent revolutions waiting to be born inside our schools and universities. Let's get right into it. Sahil, welcome to Inspired.
Thank you.
It's really great to have you on the show, and thank you so much for having at this beautiful place you're building.
Thanks, Ankur, for coming here. It's a pleasure to be with you on this show.
Great. So, you know what? I want to get right into it. And my objective today is to, not just make this like a set of questions, but sort of take a journey, deep dive into your journey of what you've been building. And more of this as a reflection space for how your journey can inspire the the larger education ecosystem, and the what do you call as future education founders that will shape the future of our country. So it's very unusual path that you have taken. As an IIT graduate, people imagine the opportunities that are available to such a desirable pedigree, and so to speak. How does that clarity come for you at that young age, that I don't want to sit for placements, I don't want to sit for any competitive exams, I'm going to go ahead and go build an institute of my own? So just walk us through that mindset of a young 22-year-old trying to build something like this.
Okay, so reflecting back, I think a lot of this was a result of the exposure that I got, the mentorship that I got. I think if I have to give credit to one thing that shaped me, was the kind of peer group and mentor group I had when I was in college. So I was at IIT Delhi.
Okay.
And we have a lot of excitement when we are going to that kind of a place, right?
Of course.
And when I was there, within the first week, I thought that I'm not fit to be an engineer.
Okay.
But that is not what we are told when we are preparing for it.
Yes, of course.
So when I realized that engineering is perhaps not for me, that is when I started exploring other things. And somehow there was always at the back of the mind that I have to do something meaningful, for the society. That was in the family upbringing. That was, the kind of teachers that we got, the values that I received when I was myself a child. And that at the back of the mind kind of nudged me into activities which were beyond academics. So a lot of social, exposure that I got in college, and a result of that was that when I was in the final year, when we had to finally decide कि अब आगे क्या करना है यहाँ से निकल के, so there is a rule in the IIT placement system, at least it was there that time, that you have to complete and submit your CV by a deadline in order to be eligible for placements, so that the companies get your CV.
Yeah.
So I thought that I have to be in something around education, but there was I didn't hope any education company would come to IITs for recruitment. I didn't know whether any education company existed at that time, so I didn't prepare my CV.
Yeah.
Because I didn't prepare my CV, I was systematically debarred from placement, which worked in my favor.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I might have ended up in an interview, and if I'd got selected, it would have been very difficult to reject that kind of an offer. One company actually came, and I got very excited about the work that they were. It was a non-profit in education. I don't remember exactly the which company, which foundation it was, but I couldn't apply because I was not eligible in my placement system. But it turned out very well for me. And when I then finally the semester ended, I was speaking with my professors, my friends, and I told them that now I want to do something full time, in this space of education and nation building, and that's when the initial idea of something like this took shape. So it was not clear that we'll end up building a university.
Okay.
We wanted to do something for the nation and for in the space of education.
Okay.
And over a few years, the idea got clarity.
Oh, you mentioned that the environment around you, or the people around you, or the mentors that you had at the time. Can you think of a pivotal moment that you really felt, like you said that, I realized within the first year that engineering was not for me. Let's start with that. Like, what was
that moment? I think was the welding class.
Is it?
When they took us into the welding lab, I thought, this is not what we were told when we became, when we got enrolled into mechanical engineering.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the courses like thermodynamics. I mean, of course, to some people they may be extremely interesting, and they solve a lot of technical problems, but I realize it is not for me.
Wonderful. So, I mean, in some ways, a deeper reflection is that sometimes we end up pursuing something which ends up being a mirage in some ways, and then once you finally get it, then you're like, oh shit, like, I mean, this is not something that I thought or imagined it to be.
Because we ourselves as students, we don't ask that question when we are in school, that what would college curriculum actually look like, and especially in places like IITs, the brand itself is so big than what we're going to learn there, that the question is never asked and is never answered.
Yes, and it ends up being that, hey, as long as you're getting into an institute like that, doesn't matter what field, doesn't matter what line of study it is, as long as you have the brand associated.
We are a rank. Our rank decides everything else.
Okay, fair enough. The options that you get, and which IIT also you get, or which type of institute you end up getting, right?
Correct.
And you mentioned that there was family support and mentorship support that you had. I mean, what was that conversations like for someone like you? I mean, think of our listeners in that age, or even parents listening.
Right.
What kind of conversations lead to rooting such ideas? That would be very curious.
So there was a lot of, if I can say, there's a lot of socio-spiritual kind of an environment at my home.
Okay.
So as a young kid, I would witness meditation classes happening inside my home. So there would be a group of people coming together and enrolling into a meditation course, a teacher coming, and and as a young kid, I was just fascinated that what is this which is happening around me. Perhaps I would be maybe 10 or 11 years old. That's also an age where I started asking such questions, that what is meditation, what is spirituality. I started going into the society and meeting people, taking part in voluntary activities. there is a organization called Bharat Vikas Parishad, so they organize some quizzes where we would talk to or learn about India, and then talk to people and participate in debates, poetry recitation, competitions, Desh Bhakti, songs.
Oh,
So all
wow.
that environment, kind of shaped my early,
Foundations, so to
foundational,
speak.
stages of life, where it was, kind of at the back of the mind that I enjoyed doing something like that, and that automatically shaped, decisions about career and what I wanted to do.
And that background gave you that sense of clarity, because I've heard you say this before, that you were excited to work but you didn't want to sit for placement, and then you were interested in public policy but you didn't want to study for UPSC. That clarity of what you want, and more importantly what you didn't
Yeah.
want, I think that's hard to come by for a 22-year-old or a 20-year-old. How did that really come about for you?
It was a iterative process. So it started with what I don't enjoy doing that much. So because of my interest in broadly, nation building or doing something for India, it was a very natural, choice that I should be preparing for UPSC. And a lot of my mentors actually advised also.
Okay.
But when I looked at the curriculum, when I spoke with some people, I thought that that may not be the best choice for me. A great way to contribute to the nation, but perhaps not for me. The more I reflected and the more I spoke with my mentors, my friends, and my own readings, I realized that there is kind of a vacuum, at least at that time, of great institutions in India. There were great people, there are great concepts, there is a strong societal force, but it has not been leveraged to set up institutions. And by institutions, I don't only mean educational institutions. Our judicial institutions, our economic institutions, our health institutions, our cultural institutions.
Okay.
Those are the institutions which give a long-term momentum to a country.
Which defines the country as
which
a
defines
large,
a country. And when we look at a country that seems to be working on certain aspects, let's say Singapore is working on certain aspects, America is working on, it seems to be working well on certain aspects. At the background, we find that there are institutions which enable that.
Yeah.
So that then became my driving force, that I want to do something which is, on the lines of institution building.
Yeah. And, building institutes within country, ultimately, there was a time between, deciding that you want to create that impact and the time, the current form of your vision taking place. Walk us through that journey, because I'm sure there were challenges in that aspect and clarity building over time. So what happened from the time you graduate and deciding that you wanted to create an impact with channel of education, and actually sort of envisioning Rishihood as we see it today?
Yeah. So when we started in our very early years, we primarily were working to help young people find a path towards nation building by getting trained and mentored through our program. So we would, let's say, we started a program called Policy Bootcamp, which was India's first summer school in public policy.
Oh, wow.
Where we would identify around 100 young kids, young professionals and students from all across the country, and expose them to what are the big problems that the nation is facing, what is the thing that is happening in public policy, and how can policy and governance become a method to solve those problems. With the idea being that through that, young people can find ways of working as policymakers, as policy scholars, as politicians, as bureaucrats. So that was the starting point. And why we started with that was, so I graduated in 2014. If you remember those, that era of India, of course, Modi became the prime minister, but there was a whole backdrop. So the preceding 3-4 years of that, when I was in college, a lot of talks about there is a corruption, big corruption, and we have to overcome that. There was a whole India against corruption movement. I was in Delhi at that time as a student, and I became very active in that movement. So all of that gave me this sense that so many young people want to do something for the country, but how do we systematically, enable that? One is as a hobby, on a weekend, I will go and I'll do a protest, or I'll, engage in a volunteering activity, which is also needed. But can it happen more methodically?
How does one build credibility in such a space where, when you're trying to influence young minds, when you yourself are quite young in that age? Because sometimes, people might feel that, age is a restriction thing for them. how does one
Yeah, I think
overcome that? Maybe it's themselves holding them back or something.
Perhaps at that point, I'm now rewinding 10, 11 years ago, I think that time still age was considered some kind of a barrier to do things like this. But now we are way past that perception. I think now it is in our favor that we are very young. In fact, when we tell that we have the youngest vice chancellor, we are a very young university. As a university, our median age is 33 years of old. Of 33 years old
wow,
of our
that's
team.
Amazing.
So that's quite young for a university. And when we share this with others, they actually feel quite hopeful because they can see that this is an institution which will, keep increasing in its quality, in its in its aspirations.
How does parents react to that?
For parents, it's very important to send their kid in an environment in which they feel the kid is
Secured.
kind of taken care of, secure.
Okay.
Not just academically secure, but also physically, emotionally secure. But because they are the best asset for the kid is the best asset for a parent. The work that we do comes across as a very genuine work to the parent, and then it does not matter whether we are young or not. Generally, when they meet us, they talk to us. When they hear our own backgrounds, that the way we've ourselves seen some of the best, we've studied at best institutions and now we are doing this, it generates a lot of confidence.
Okay.
Yeah. And I my hope is that more and more people from such backgrounds will come up in this field of education, because this is a field which otherwise has not been the most aspirational field
absolutely
to work in.
And I definitely want to talk a lot more about that how really we can invite more youth in taking the initiatives that you have taken in your journey. But so from that, doing this thing where you were trying to inspire young minds to sort of contribute and participate in, because it's very easy to complain about things, right? and taking action to really say that, okay, I'm going to take matters in my own hand and do something about the problems that we are facing as a nation. From that journey to saying, okay, now I'll formalize this into an institute. Can you just walk us through that?
So when we are doing these programs around leadership, we figured out our pedagogy, that how do we make teaching learning process very interesting. Because that was in my own life, that was one of the big problems that I faced. Engineering for me could have been very interesting if it was taught in a certain way. But I just lost interest in that. Similarly, it's true for any topic. So when we were doing our leadership programs, we figured out that a very hands-on, very interactive, very practice-based approach was something that was working well. So in all our programs, we would have real-life bureaucrats, politicians, social leaders, reformers come in and train our students. And that is when we figured out that this is what we have to keep evolving as a methodology of teaching. So that is one thing that happened. Second was, we realized that with this right kind of peer group and right kind of mentorship, students are able to make very bold decisions about their careers, which in a cocooned environment gets stunted.
The exposure gave them that outlay that okay, ye bhi ho sakta hai.
Yes. So I remember some of our alumni, typical IT jobs, software jobs, bright people, they would come into our program, they would listen to the faculty, interact with them, and figure out that what they had been wanting to do at the in their subconscious mind, it's really possible. Yes. So a person would quit an IT job and become an exporter of organic food.
Wow.
A person would quit a banking job and start doing rural economy development in Bihar and Jharkhand. So we have seen those kind of career transformations.
Wow.
And then it became evident that we have figured out some part of how to teach, which is the pedagogy, what to teach, which is bringing in the real life practitioners and making it happen, and what can it lead to, which is very impactful career choices.
Yeah.
And we had reached a point where to scale it and sustain it, we had to give it some kind of a structure.
Yeah.
So we have seen great leadership schools in other countries. We felt that why is there no school or no university in India which really talks about creating leaders, creating problem solvers, and enabling them to solve national problems.
Wow.
So that was the trigger. One reference that we got was there's a Matsushita Institute in Japan.
Okay.
So Matsushita is the founder of Panasonic.
Okay.
Now he's no more. So when he was retiring from after building Panasonic, he thought that Japan should get great leaders, both in its government and its management, and he created this institution to build such leaders. And when someone gave us that reference that what you're trying to do, you just check them out. And we realized that one of their alumni had become the prime minister of Japan. So then it was kind of clear that let's create something which will produce CEOs, which will produce a prime minister, which will produce several public leaders, social reformers, innovators, technologists. So yeah, we are on that journey now.
So right from the beginning, that reimagination of what success really is, it's not the conventional way of you get a good job and you move up the corporate ladder. It is about what is nation's priorities, what is needed for us to grow as a nation, and what skills and knowledges and motives that you can build up in those young minds to really shape the future of the country.
Because it doesn't make sense to individually be very successful in a not so successful country. Right? What will we do?
Well said.
So it is in my selfish interest to have a great nation, because only then I can have a great life.
Makes sense.
And if country's best talent can solve for that, then automatically our own careers are taken care of.
Absolutely. And I think working towards the ecosystem is always that larger vision. And let's talk about, then obviously Rishi Hood starting. First of all, why the name Rishi Hood?
So the name comes from Swami Vivekananda's lectures. He's like a so as one of my I was telling you about my upbringing and family values. So in one of the inter-school competitions, I had to do a fancy dress, and I had to become Swami Vivekananda.
Oh, okay.
Wear the pagdi and dress like him. I didn't know who he was, what he did. I only knew that he was a great man, a very inspirational youth role model.
Yeah.
When I was in college, that happened to be 150 years of Swami Vivekananda. It gave an excuse for us to understand who he was.
Okay.
And I started reading a bit about him. And then when this situation arose that now we have to build a university and we have to find a name, I again that time happened to be reading lectures of Swami Vivekananda. So he actually has coined this phrase, Rishi Hood. It's a Sanskrit and English combination. So someone had to coin it. So he says that it's the state of our ultimate potential, achieving our ultimate potential of humans, and that is what rishis have always been. And the leaders of our society, the Indian society, the Indian civilization, were always the rishis. We've never treated our kings or military generals or business leaders as the most important leaders of the society. The rishis were the most important leaders. And rishi is a kind of a misunderstood concept. We feel that we have to go into a forest and keep meditating in order to be a rishi. No, but rishis were really active in the day-to-day world. They would solve all kinds of problems. They would be mathematicians, they would be economists, they would be astronomers, they would be doctors.
Yeah, in our mythology, you find them to be like everyone would turn to rishis to get guidance. Correct. Whether it is even like kingdoms would get guidance from them, and obviously all those things.
So that is what Vivekananda says, that ultimately all of us have to achieve that. And this is like a rishihood is like childhood is the state of being a rishi. Childhood is being the state of a child. Rishihood is the state of being a rishi. That's how he describes it. So we felt that it's a very appropriate name that gives a vision to our university.
That makes sense. I mean,
if there is a one word that can define our vision, it's rishihood. Now, how can we achieve the state of being a rishi?
And it goes back to helping every person becoming the best version of themselves, right? Realizing your individual best potential. It's not so much about competition or comparison. Everyone has something larger to contribute, and when you're able to inspire an aggregate of larger young minds, you're basically improving the overall country. So.
And exactly. So when we individually have achieved our full potential, the nation also achieved its collective potential.
You're increasing your lowest common denominator in some ways.
Yeah, we have to change the baseline.
Yeah, makes sense. Awesome. That's great. Now, in terms of the core philosophy behind, I mean, I get the name and everything that you're talking about. It's amazing to see that how it's interlinked to everything. But if you were to talk about the core philosophy of rishihood, how would you describe that to our audience?
So our educational philosophy rests on three pillars of what is the rishihood way of learning. So we say personal impact, professional impact, and public impact.
Yes.
So personal is that as an individual, whether it's my emotional, resilience, whether my physical resilience, my intellectual capacities, they have to be shaped. My habits have to be shaped. My character has to be shaped, because that is what will sustain me in the long run as a leader. So that's the work on our personal, front. Generally, the issue is that when we talk of holistic education, people feel that only this is holistic education, right? Other things are not holistic, but that's incorrect. This is one part of holistic education, one important part, but holistic is really holistic. It's not one. The second thing is professional impact, which means that whatever I have learned, whatever skills I have to finally apply them in a professional setting, because people are coming here for a professional course, right? They're not coming here to pass their time for 4 years and just become a nice person, right? They can become nice person by themselves. They don't need a university degree for that. So by professional impact, what we do is our curriculum and the way we teach has to be as close to the industry as possible. So we actively involve the industry in not just designing the curriculum, but also delivering the curriculum. So a lot of our faculty members come from an industry exposure. So it's a very interesting blend of an academic and industry.
Oh, so you have actually professionals who are either running companies or are leaders in companies who come and teach certain topics or subjects.
So not just certain topics. We have people who quit their industry
Oh, they've taken
jobs.
Academia full time.
They've taken academia full time, and that's what we encourage more and more people to do.
Wow.
Because that's how we bring in that exposure into into the classroom. So that's professional impact. And third is public impact, which is the whole connection with the nation. That once I have my personal impact capacities, I'm sorted as an individual. When I have good professional abilities, then I must apply them to solve social and national problems. So that's what we give them as a mindset, kind of a perspective that life is not limited to oneself. Life is a collective, and this is what we call as the holistic model of education at Rishi.
So this impact that you're trying to create, right? I mean, it's obviously impact for the country, for the individual young minds to achieve their best potential. How do you measure that? It's very difficult, I believe.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not that everything has to be measured. Some of the things can only be observed. So I was telling you about a career shift that happens in a person's life, right? We don't have to measure it. We just have to see it as a fact that a person was comfortable and happy working as a software engineer, but the person is equally comfortable and happy working as an agro entrepreneur, but perhaps creating more impact,
larger impact.
Right? So that's the kind of transformation we want to see at a personal level. Just some small examples.
Yeah, please.
So young people, including perhaps you and me, we are kind of digital natives, right? Phones are our favorite hobby.
Yeah.
But if we keep ourselves addicted to phone and late in the night, we slowly get into insomnia, right?
Yeah.
We feel sleep deprivation. Can we prevent that from happening for our students, right? So that's a way of impact. So that's a guidance and a culture setting and a habit formation that we have to do at this age.
Yeah.
So physical fitness. So we have sports as a compulsory part of our model, our way of learning. We introduce all the students to yoga and meditation when they come in as in the first year itself, in the first semester itself.
Wow.
So those are the kind of things that we do, and they set the foundation for a long-term impact.
Yeah. And I think what you talk about yoga and meditation, and increasingly the larger world is recognizing the power of practices of meditation, and we're living in a society which is increasingly full of stress, anxiety, mental health, that's becoming a huge challenge. Is that something you guys actively discuss, engage and prepare the students, and how do you recommend others do that?
So we have a full credited course, like I think 4 or 5 credit course called Self and Society.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I want to hear about it.
Which is a course happens in the first semester as well as in the second semester.
Okay.
Where understanding the self, our emotions, our fragilities, our issues that we are facing, let's say in our relationships or in our diet or in our behavior, all that is we create a comfortable environment where those things can be discussed.
Wow.
Right? Otherwise, they're kind of hidden, and people don't want to
people
talk
don't
about
know how
that.
to deal with it, how to express it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they feel that it's probably incorrect to express,
to even talk about
to
it.
even talk about it. Yeah. But once that safe space is created, and when we provide them the right guidance in the and through the right faculty who themselves have learned that and practiced that,
Yeah.
that is when people become comfortable with this idea. I don't think that all our students will actually end up as meditators, right? That's
Of
not
course.
that's a hope, but that's an impractical goal to have. But at least they will get an orientation
Absolutely.
when they're here, and perhaps in some point in their life they will be more ready towards a more holistic success than they otherwise would have been.
And you know what they say is that when you get the exposure, you're at least open to it.
Yeah.
You know, you see, it's not like something that's going to shake you up. Yeah, I'm seeing it for the first time.
Correct.
It's like, yeah, I've done it. Maybe I was not at a time or a place or mentally or in where I was to really embrace it. But like you said, over time, there might come a time where they actually might find peace and helpfulness.
So these are all dots that later connect in life.
You're leaving those pathways for
So one of our faculty says that learners are popcorns. We put them into the cooker and sometime they will pop. It's not fixed that they will pop at this particular time, but they must
Very
pop.
interesting analogy, yeah. Very cool. And speaking of faculty, when you were trying to, obviously, here are young minds putting a university structure together. I'm imagining everyone you're hiring at that time or bringing together are much more experienced and probably, older than you and your team as well. Was there initial resistance among faculty or even parents that you were talking to initially, early years, where there is no sort of record, proof of concept and all of that? What sort of challenges did you face that, people, ultimately we are trying to inspire more people to do this, right? So what they can learn from your journey in that aspect.
It always remains a work in progress. So I can't claim to be the most inspiring CEO of the country, right? So I have to build myself while building Rishi. And I think that's my learning. If I have to share it for future educational entrepreneurs, even when we are young, we are starting with something, something shows success, then we make it bigger. That shows success, we make it bigger. So as I said, we started with just small, short-term programs on leadership, on public policy. They became successful. So as a result, we tried to do some more activities. They became successful. So that's how we've kept growing organically.
Yeah, and what I want you to deep dive for us a little bit is, was it more that the type of people you were bringing together, they basically first believed in the vision and what you were trying to achieve? For them, it was more that, hey, we are trying to become a part of something larger than ourselves, rather than like, hey, it's just an opportunity which might be financially more lucrative or something like that.
So it has to work on every front, right? It has to be professionally lucrative enough for someone, working in an Apple or a Deloitte to leave their career and come here, and that's happened also. But that's not enough, right? That's only kind of a hygiene that my expenses are taken care of. But the people who are coming here, they're also looking to do something more meaningful in their life, right? That's why they're taking this shift, and that depends first on the vision. But we can't just be speaking about the vision, for a long time. Finally, it has to be seen in action.
Yeah.
So our initial challenge was that there was nothing on the ground.
Yes.
We were speaking about a vision. That's why we have to start small and keep expanding from there. Absolutely. Now there are things, which are there, in
it's always easier to, have, people see, touch, feel the vision than just hear it.
Yeah.
So when all those sensories are in place, then it's obviously that's the impact for even for a business, it's like that.
Correct,
you have a proof of concept, and then you have a few customers, and then that snowballs into more customers coming through.
And the nature of an educational institution is that everything is people, right?
Yeah.
Unless unlike a manufacturing company or an IT company, where there are some other kinds of things. So in a form, our raw material is people. We are bringing in students. Our product is also people. We are graduating students. Our in a way, customer is a student also, a parent also, and a recruiter also. So everything, and our machinery, which is the faculty, that's also a people. So it's 100% people.
Yeah.
And that is a very organic process, to perfect. And I don't claim to be perfect, right? There's a vision, and we are constantly trying to get closer to that vision.
That makes sense. And I think I'm very curious, from what you imagined to what you are today. Was there anything that really surprised you about what you were trying to build at Rishihood, or something in your model of Rishihood that has surprised you?
Building something that has, building our model that has surprised us.
Like about your, like how you build the model piece by piece over the years. What was like the biggest surprise in this process for you?
One biggest surprise was that people would really, leave something which is otherwise very lucrative to do something like this, both as students and as team, as faculty. We are also pleasantly surprised by what companies are telling us. So when we go to them and we ask them, what are you looking for in a graduate? Skills are kind of on the side, because they know the skills are changing so fast, and they only will be able to learn those skills if they have that mindset of curiosity. So the mindsets and the habits, they become more important. So for example, one founder told us very categorically that if your graduates can come on time for a meeting, I'll recruit.
Oh wow, yeah, and such a basic thing, but yet such hard to sometimes achieve.
So those are the habits that if we form those habits, at the right time in our lives, they stick with us forever.
I talk to a lot of K through 12 educators as well, and often the conversation is that you're trying to train and educate students for skills and knowledge or something, or say professions that don't probably even exist, with so much change happening, from technological advancements to how the world is evolving. I mean, higher ed still is a little bit closer to that the time frame is maybe 4 years from the time coming into graduating, but a K through 12 has 12 years before they even get to a college, and then that another 4 years. So how do you work with that challenge of gap, because you can solve something that you know today, but how can you solve for something you don't even know exists?
Correct. So we try to do exactly that we know a few things that exist today, and there are skill gaps today. For example, AI is an important skill gap today, right? Having AI engineers in India. So we have that as a program, as a course. But there would be some things that will emerge later, which we can't predict fully. We only have some kind of a vague idea because of the trends that we are seeing. And that's why our interactions with the industry, with the scientific community, they become very important, because that gives us some kind of a trend that this is what we must start including in our curriculum. But more important than that is the habit formation, that if we do those meta skills, if we build in the habit of curiosity and hard work and a bias for action, then automatically wherever our alumni end up later, they will have those foundational habits which will make them pick up new skills.
So these foundational habits is something what I can relate to, is that even though we are in an ever changing world, everything seems to be advancing and changing constantly, but there are certain basic things which will remain constant for the foreseeable future.
Correct.
And that is something like being on time, punctuality, and all that.
We use 3 values. We call it Jigyasa, Chikirsa, and Anand.
Okay.
So Jigyasa is curiosity.
Okay.
The unsatiable desire to keep learning. I think that's a fundamental trait for success. Second is Chikirsha, which is the willingness to act. We just don't have to keep learning, but convert that learning into an action. So a bias for action. Right? The joy that we get from acting, that's Chikirsha. And third is Anand, living a life that's blissful.
Joy of life.
Joy of life. Otherwise, very successful people, they face a midlife crisis. We don't want to be in a situation where our alumni, extremely successful, they start questioning their own existence when they are in their 40s. So that's the habit of or the perspective of being at ease, being joyful. So Jigyasa, Chikirsha, and Anand, there we say them these are 3 foundational attributes of a Rishi.
And how do you instill those in your students?
So it's some is kind of part of the formal curriculum. So I was explaining you about the self and society course. We have a whole foundational curriculum where we introduce them to grand challenges, which motivates them to act. Right. If I know that these are some of the big challenges that the country and the world is facing, my desire to act on them increases vis-a-vis if I'm just totally insulated from that knowledge. And a lot of that then happens through practice. So only some things can be taught. Others, a lot of it has to be really practiced. So the assignments that we give, or the internships that the students go on to, or the projects that they build, those are the things that then set the base for these values.
That's what I'm hearing is that, ultimately be curious always to learn, apply your curiosity into action, and then be blissful about
Yeah.
it, being thankful for it,
Yeah.
and happy about what you've been able to accomplish,
Yeah.
and sort of work from there.
Yes.
I think that's very interesting, and I'm not sure if there are many education programs who've picked on this as a formal part of their curriculum. Is that something very unique to you, Rishi?
So we see some elements of this, and in different vocabularies,
Okay.
being available as frameworks.
Yeah.
So I won't say that this
You're the
is
only one doing
we're
it,
the
yeah.
only one, and we don't want to be the only one. I mean,
Yeah,
this,
of course.
this has to be done more and more. Particularly in higher education, I've not seen this as a prominent kind of ask from higher education. So that's a challenge that we're facing. But I think the more and more fragilities of the world, people are seeing now in this VUCA world or the Bani world. I think now people will also feel that we need something more from education. So when the society starts demanding that from education, automatically more people will start providing that.
Yeah, and I think there is a constant challenge. Like I said, there are other institutes who might be aspiring to do similar things. But then from a student's perspective, even today, there is a lot of emphasis on being part of government institutes or being part of government jobs, right? How do we change that narrative? Because I mean, that alone cannot change the nation as we are aspiring to here.
Correct.
How do you change that?
I think that's a big, I would say, a national problem. And a national actually wastage of talent also.
Yeah.
Because in our prime age of youth, we are spending 1, 2, 3 years preparing for a certain government job. So UPSC, Army, banks, state civil services, PSUs, so many of them, railways. I was doing some analysis. I think there are roughly 3 to 4 crore people preparing for these different kinds of government jobs at any given point of time. This is huge number. Huge number.
And they're very talented and rigorous people. Imagine someone who's committing so much to preparation for these exams.
Exactly.
In fact, I had a colleague of mine who recently wanted to leave because they want to now prepare for one of the competitive exams. And I mean, you feel that, hey, you obviously want to encourage someone's pursuit of their own career choices. But at some level, you feel that that's in some ways drained to the economy or drained to the national resource.
And individually, for that person, it becomes extremely if the person is not selected. So 3-4 crore people applying for such places. I think there are only 2 or 3 lakh vacancies. So that's the kind of mismatch there is, right? Only 1%. So what happens to the rest of the 99%? It not only becomes demotivated, they're kind of disconnected from rest of the functioning world for 1 or 2 years of their lives. And it becomes very difficult for them to jump back in.
Yeah.
That's the problem that we must address as a nation. So one of the things that we have been advocating for is we should not have so many 4, 5, 6 attempts, in these exams. 1 or 2 attempts, and then we should just
move on basically.
Move on. And I think this has started to happen with the rise of the private sector. The more it rises, the more the culture of startups, private jobs, self-employment, freelancing, gig economy, the more they rise, people find alternate avenues of stable and meaningful and growing careers, which is what was initially thought that only a government job can provide me with. But now I think people are realizing that there are more options.
But what is that inherent thing about government jobs you feel that people just feel super safe around it?
I think because it is actually safe, because once we get into the government, we are not removed. Which is
so that job security comes with that ki bhai ab to ek baar aa gaye, then nothing's going to go.
Which should not be the case.
Yeah.
Just like a person for non-performance can be removed
from a private job, government should do that.
I as a CEO should be removed if I'm not doing my work properly. Similarly, it should be true for a government sector job also. Elon Musk was also removed, right? Finally from his job at Dodge.
Yeah, there you go. And we're seeing all that action happening.
Yeah.
What can private education institutes do to build that credibility, especially when people get really excited about part of government institutes or government jobs and all that? So what can private education institutes do to build that credibility?
And overall, the credibility of the private sector in India is growing. I think this is a post-liberalization phenomena that we've seen. Private initiatives, whether it is companies, non-profits, educational institutions. If you look at education particularly, it's very interesting that in all of our K through 12 education, we want to choose the best private school,
Of course.
right, over a government school.
Yeah.
But the moment it comes to higher education, there's a sudden switch. Right?
Yeah.
We
Which
want
is
to-
surprising.
it's surprising. Compared to, let's say, the US, 9 out of top 10 of their universities are private universities.
Of course.
But we feel that they are government, right? It's just in our
Because
imagination.
they become such huge
so big.
institutes कि by
Correct.
default वो image of
We
government
feeling ऐसी आती
is
है,
आते हैं.
right? So that's a situation we want to change, and Rishi is a part of that change. Fortunately, there are more universities that are now coming up, private universities. I think in the next maybe 10, 15, 20 years, there will be a high degree of belief and comfort with the whole notion of private initiatives in education at a higher education level. In terms of shifting this mindset from a government job to a private job, I think that is a function of how exciting and how many of such jobs are being created in India. Given the size of our population, I have a view which is not a very job-centric view for India to sustain its growth.
Yeah.
So we are around 140 crore people. Every year, around 3 crore people are entering
The workforce.
The workforce. They're becoming, they're crossing, let's say, the age of 22. So from the age of 22 all the way to maybe age of 60, that's the demography.
The universe of your workforce.
Yeah. But formal sector jobs in total are less than 10 crores, right? So that's a mismatch.
Huge gap,
So we can't expect that everyone will actually get a job or will be actually employed in the formal workforce sector. We have to create a lot of avenues of work, and that is where entrepreneurship and self-employment plays a key role. I think that's the answer to India's growth story. However, charming it may sound that we have to create jobs for everyone, mathematically it doesn't seem to be working out for me.
Yeah. Interesting. And I mean, there's a lot of school owners listening here on this conversation as well. I always say that conventionally speaking, a higher ed's focus is always ki, a student gets out, their strongest metrics is placements, and their ultimate goal is ki we send the child to a good company to work for, and it seems like that's our yardstick of success. From a K through 12 perspective, the yardstick is getting into a good college. Like, how many of our students have been placed overseas, how many of our students are going to top education institutes, higher ed institutes in India, right? And that obviously has its own pros and cons, if you may. So what would be your advice to these K through 12 educators, what they should be working on in their environments to really help? Because it's not like you can change the world in 4 years.
Yeah.
A lot of foundational work has to happen.
Correct.
Right? What can they do that will make institutes job easier, and not just easier, but they will have that jo basic level ka connection hota hai, that they've built, those capacities are built out from early years.
Correct.
What do you recommend to them?
So I have a little radical opinion on this.
Okay.
So schools have 12 years, right?
Yeah.
12 years plus early years. So 15 years of education
Absolutely
available to them. And when the person is leaving a school, the person is around 18 years of age.
Yes.
I think that much of life should be sufficient for a person to enter the real world. If school education is focused on properly and is not a method to enter into a competitive exam and then into a college, I think universities and colleges will not be needed for a large population. So as a university founder, it is
very counterintuitive
for me to
hear.
be,
but
for me to be
I
saying
can see the validation.
But I don't think that crores of people every year have to get into formal degree education if in their first 18 years they get the physical maturity, the emotional maturity and the intellectual maturity to be ready for the real world. If you look at the whole existence of human species, this university thing is a very recent phenomena.
Yes.
I think because we have not focused on actual skills, the vocational skills, the hand skills, the problem solving skills in our school curriculum, we have made it too theoretical and abstract. That is where people are not coming out ready for the real world. If we fix that, then we will have people who are ready to be employed at 18. I mean, I would love to employ a person
out of school
18,
and
19
who's
years
got
old.
that maturity that you're talking about.
The only thing that I would look for is that maturity. Right? That's the only thing. Otherwise, in terms of skill set, there's not much of a difference for a large population who are just going to any degree college. Of course, for specialized skills there is a need for universities, but otherwise for simple skills of
So what really can these educators do? Do you recommend they have programs like self awareness in their schools as well, or
think
other
so.
things that they can do?
I think some some of the more ambitious educational entrepreneurs in the K through 12 domain should keep that as a target, that by when my student is graduating from 12th, I want at least 10% of them to be to not be going to college, but to be doing something either of their own or getting employed, and then work backwards from the talent, so from the target. So talk to the company and figure out what do they want as skills in their recruits, and include that in the curriculum. I'm sure that we can teach principles of sales and marketing to an 11th and 12th grader.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why not? And that's a huge sector of jobs.
Schools are experimenting with even entrepreneurial opportunities with the school with the students. So I think
school curriculum is extremely straitjacketed, and it's also governed by national boards and bodies.
That,
I think some people should take a risk and try a few new methods. I've seen a growing interest in exploring NIOS, National Institute of Open Studies, which is like no board, which is open. I just give that exam at the end of 12th so that I can
considered as a 12th pass.
Yeah. But the learning is entirely self-designed.
Yeah.
So I recently met the founder of Zoho, Sridhar Vembu, in his village in Tenkasi. An extremely inspiring person who has been doing a lot of these educational reforms. His latest project is he's actually building a school which will not be a CBSE or an IB or an ICSE school. It will be an NIOS school.
Oh wow!
So NIOS is currently seen as something which is like for the last rung of the society. जिनको
कुछ नहीं है हो सकता है,
उनके लिए NIOS है. But actually that's not true. It is giving us a freedom to learn the way I want to.
Yeah.
And if I can structure a school around that, I'm solving for the need of a 12th certificate, but rest everything else I can design myself.
So you know what I'm hearing and getting inspired about is that you share a vision where you want to create a larger impact, and my question becomes that you're creating something very unique in your environment. How much of it do you consider it as open source for others to inspire? I mean, what's your philosophy around that?
Yeah, so I said India is a large country. I myself feel that there should be maybe around 100 universities of this nature to solve the problem of the size that India has. So we want to be extremely open source. In fact, we keep putting a lot of our initiatives in the public domain. And through podcasts like this, it's a way to also reach out to more and more people, share what we are doing, learn from what others are doing. So we are very open source, not just in just for the sake of it, but our own mission of a developed nation will not be fulfilled unless more and more
you're able to spread it to a larger audience.
Correct.
Absolutely. So imagine a 22-year-old today, getting inspired by conversations like these, or getting inspired by just hearing or seeing projects like Rishi Hood come to fruition. What would be your advice for them to learn from your journey?
I think one is this aspect of thinking in a disruptive mode. Education for a long time has not been disrupted. Right? A lot of sectors have been, tech got disrupted, defense, got disrupted, mobility is getting disrupted. So the more and more young, fresh ideas and people come into education, it has the chance of being disrupted. So with that as the ambition, I want more and more young people to choose this as a career. 22 years, graduating out of colleges in India, choose that you want to do something in education, and I'm seeing that happening. I'm not just
you're seeing more young founders getting into education.
In fact, just next week we are hosting a retreat of some of IIT alumni who are either already doing something in education or are wanting to do,
or on the fence for it,
so that we can spread, we can take inspiration from each other and spread share our insights and learn from each other. So that's the idea of this meetup. So we want more and more people to take that plunge. I also think that starting slow, perfecting our model around something, and then scaling is a good idea. Around education. A lot of people that I meet who want to do something in education, their idea is, I want to build a school. Like that's one of the most common aspirations to solve education's problems. That's a very valid aspiration to have, but that's a large project to be stating on to be starting on day one.
Yeah.
Right? We have to really identify what's this smaller problem of school education that we want to solve, through which they can eventually build a school. Unless someone has money to really go all in and build a school, I think most of the people who are 22 years old and wanted to do something in education would not have the money to really build a school on day one.
And that probably is one of the biggest sort of a barrier to entry in this segment.
The entry barrier in education, in physical formal education, is very high, because we have to invest in real estate, vis-a-vis, let's say, an edtech, where we can start asset light. But edtech will not be able to solve all the problems. So we also need disruptions in the formal education.
So how does one go about solving this barrier to entry?
I think once we demonstrate that we can do this one thing well. So let's say I want to become a medical university. I want to disrupt healthcare and medical education.
Sure.
Doing that means a few hundred crores, of a project. But if I can demonstrate that I have solved for maybe a particular domain, let's say I've solved for NEET, examination, or maybe I've solved for the problem of doctors continuously needing to keep preparing, upskill themselves, or maybe I've solved the problem of the shortage of nurses and paramedic staff. Then I build my own experience and some credibility to be able to go to a donor or an investor that I feel now I'm ready to build a university, and it's a step-by-step process, right? So when we were building Rishi, we would say that we want to build India's best university, but that's only a statement of inspiration, right? It's not a statement of confidence. Ki aap actually mein karoge kya? So then 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years, we are demonstrating that yes, we are moving from here to here to here to here, and now we are ready to build a university, and from a university now we are ready to build one more program into our school, and we are ready to have one more hostel and bring in a new batch. So that iterative process one has to be ready to go through. It's a long patience, kind of a domain. We can't expect quick wins in education.
Absolutely. You can't walk in with a vision to a philanthropist or an investor, if you may, and say that I have my vision and would you be willing to be part of it? You have to be able to showcase those small wins and a pathways to saying, hey, this is how I plan to do it. I've already taken off step 1, step 2. Now can we join
And because
force?
it's 100% people, the domain of education, it takes time. Unlike anything else where I can manufacture something or I can serve something, and I can make a food item and it's quickly there.
It's not like you can show a sample that hey, here's what I plan to do. So absolutely. And ultimately, from that products analogy, you really have to go through batches of students to really say that's the impact I'm creating. And even doing this for so many years, you're still very young as an institute to really showcase a lot of those examples. There must be a lot in play.
And doing that continuously also is a feedback loop for us. It's not that we have started the process and abhi hota rahega. Right? Every new intake and every outgoing batch is a feedback loop for us.
But if I was to think of going back to the formal structure that exists and what you guys are reimagining, if you had for the larger education, not just what you're able to do at Rishi, you'll have more control over there, and maybe some places you don't have control because of the guidelines and all that you have to be part of a formal structure. But if you had that magic wand and would change one thing about higher ed, where would you use that one wish to one wish?
So it has to be less and less regulated to the extent of not being regulated. And higher education perhaps is I think one of the most regulated domains. So I was just doing this mental calculations that if you look at financial companies, they are not required to be governed by CAs or CFAs. Right? If you look at hospitals, they are not required to be administered by doctors. If you look at media houses, they did not be founded and governed by journalists. why is education a domain in which an educational institution has to be founded, governed, or administered by academics? There is no logic to it, but there is a regulation to it.
Yeah.
So if we can ease such regulations, it becomes more motivating and easier for new people like me to come into this domain. अभी एक credibility इससे भी आती है कि ओ यार वो आपका नाम के आगे डॉक्टर कहाँ है?
Degree,
people are searching for it,
yeah.
right?
Oh.
So those are the things that we need to disrupt for a lot of fresh ideas, talent to
even
come
for
into
teachers,
education.
right? There, even for K through 12 teachers, you have to have a minimum of B.Ed, and we all know how those access comes.
Yeah, I think B.Ed is the single biggest culprit of for keeping school education where it is.
Yeah.
If we remove that, if we say that anyone can teach, you just should have the love for teaching. You should know how to teach.
Yeah.
And you can get trained into teaching, right? It's not that B.Ed is the only way to get trained into teaching.
Absolutely.
We'll see a lot of people showing an interest in becoming teachers.
But what's the one thing that you would really like to deregulate first?
This B.Ed thing.
Oh, okay. And is that applicable for higher ed as well?
It's not.
Okay. But
for higher ed, I would like to deregulate the PhD thing.
You have to have a PhD for your professor.
There's some boundaries that at least these many persons have to have a PhD, but PhD actually is a research degree. It's not a teaching degree.
Okay.
For undergrad education, what we need is people who want to teach, mentor, coach, sit with that young mind and help them figure out their life.
One thing that has in my own experience, of attending university overseas was when I was talking to my friends and peers in India. One of the biggest difference that when we were talking, exchanging about how our classroom experience was, I always felt, and it was very apparent in the way the expectation was set by the professors there, was that, hey, I am not here to teach you. I am just here to facilitate the conversation, especially in higher ed, that I am just here to facilitate the conversation between you. So there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning happening, and exchange of ideas. Whereas in contrast, over here, we sort of glorify the teacher to an extent ki if the teacher has said it, that is the right answer, if you may. There is no perspective exchange.
Yeah.
Do you think there is still challenges like that in higher ed in India, or it's getting better?
And it's not just a higher education thing. Actually, you're mentioning the example from the US.
Yeah.
So there, from the school itself, the interaction, the amount of interaction in the classroom is extremely high.
Yes.
So students there are not passive recipients of this is my this is what the teacher told me, I'll do an homework and get done with it. We actually have to present our views. There's a lot of debate and interaction happening in the classroom. So even if you talk to a young kid, a school going kid in the US or in a large part of the Western world, you will find them to be quite argumentative and
absolutely
talkative. So
critical thinking gets developed that way.
Yeah.
They are much more confident about sharing ideas. There is no fear of my idea is going to be stupid, or I'm going to be judged for what I am saying, because it's part and parcel of their practice. They're openly sharing their thoughts.
So higher education is an extension of the pedagogy, the culture that they've already experienced in high schools. So because here the school education is also very one way, even if we create a very interactive atmosphere in the classroom, it takes time for the students to feel, oh, I can talk.
Yes. And it doesn't stop at school, right? I mean, school is only 7-8 hours the maximum of a child's life per day. It has to be around their ecosystem, how their, the openness at home, because, I've spoken to educators that are trying to innovate this cycle where, schools are designed to eliminate fear out of the school life. So there are schools which talk about there's no bells, because anything they say we are a yes school. We don't say no in our school, because all our lives we keep saying you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't go here, you can't think like that. And then later on, once they get to college or in professional life, they're saying think outside the box. All their lives they've been trying to put in a box, and then all suddenly you're like, okay, I have to think outside the box.
And if we try to mimic the real life, the professional world, it automatically becomes clear that I have to articulate what my point of view is. Otherwise, what's my need in being in a meeting? Right?
Absolutely.
I'm a written person.
You see that in workplace also, where you'll come across colleagues, even though they have the potential, they've just not been exposed to taking action, and they feel like for them to contribute meaningfully, someone has to tell them what to do. and that's something that higher ed is.
That's one of the big problems that the employers are facing. They're looking for people who they don't have to tell what to
Tell
do.
what to do,
They
exactly.
should come up that this is what I figured out. Tell me your feedback and I'll get this done.
So I've heard you talk about systemic education, entrepreneurship. How does that come in practice for your students? Systemic education, entrepreneurship, like entrepreneurial mindset, where the initiatives that you're taking around that.
So one good thing that has happened in India in the last maybe particularly in the 4 or 5 years, but in last 10, 15 years more so, is people are very excited about the idea of entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
right?
everyone wants to be an entrepreneur now.
Yeah, correct. It's I think India's #1 aspiration. Earlier, our role models used to be cricketers and Bollywood actors. Now our role models are startup founders, successful startup founders. And even now I've started seeing that in parents who are not entrepreneurs, they are also comfortable with the idea. At least some of them are comfortable with the idea कि मेरा बच्चा अगर startup करना चाह रहा है, I don't mind. Because they are seeing that because of the venture capital available, the risk is not as big as it used to be, some time ago.
And there's a pathways to success that they've seen. They've seen those humbling stories of, rags to riches founders coming from India now. Yeah.
So when that, so I think we have the critical mass now.
Yes.
अभी तक हम वो critical mass अपनी society में बना रहे थे. Because that mass is there, it becomes easier for us as a university and for others to, play with that spark.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's
ignite
let's bring in an idea, a problem statement into the classroom, and let's figure out a startup solution to solve that.
Nice.
It's very acceptable now and even desirable now to have an internship in a startup vis-a-vis an established companies. I mean, our students want to work as interns and as employees in a startup, in a founder's office, in a GTM role, rather than in a desk role in a very large established company. That's the change we are seeing. What we are doing is, one, we have a whole major on entrepreneurship. We have like a BBA program which is dedicated to entrepreneurship.
Nice.
Some of the features which are kind of unique. So we have a 10,000 rupee opening balance for all our students. So they when they join, if they are 18,
every student,
nice. they get a 10,000 rupees opening balance for public markets. So the idea is
actual trading.
This is real money.
Okay.
Real money invested in real stocks, real profit.
So
and
they
loss.
get a demat account and all of that by the university.
Yeah, we facilitate all of that. Of course, it's their demat account.
Obviously.
We facilitate, and it has created kind of a healthy competition. कि कौन सी कंपनीज में कर रहे हो, क्या चल रहा है, तुम्हारे स्टॉक्स का क्या हुआ, and our faculty actually guides them in this entire process. So the idea is to make them comfortable with the idea of with the concept of saving, investing, wealth creation, money.
Wealth creation,
because when they go out, that should not be the time when they start feeling oh अभी मेरे को salary आ रही है, अभी मैं क्या करूँ. They would have a 4-year history of they have a 4-year muscle memory of investing.
Absolutely.
Right? That becomes very useful when they get their first proper stipend or salary. Right. So that's just one thing. Then
this is an amazing initiative, by the way.
And I think so. This is open source, right? I would on your podcast, I would like to declare that more and more universities should just provide a 10,000 rupees opening balance, to the students.
Absolutely, because I think the idea of not getting attached to a paycheck. Because salary is ultimately in some ways a drug that way, right? And it's not saying that you cannot make a living being employed as part of a good initiative, but it's still you have to diversify the funds coming through the salary is just means of coming money. Wealth creation has to be through investing and diversifying.
And we also learn the importance of money. Right? It's not only wealth creation, but how valuable money can be. Right? Those sensibilities, if you can develop in a college life, and when we get the this feeling that now I own a part of a business, it's a very empowering feeling. So Naval Ravikant, one of the ace investors, he says that we can never be wealthy by just renting out our time, basically through salary. We have to own a piece of a business, which does not mean we have to start a business.
Yes,
we can actually own through the market.
That makes sense. Most founders would chase like a product market fit, right? In your case, what I'm hearing is a lot of like the value fit with the institute, right? Core values, while we want to be progressive, at the same time rooted with some foundational value as a nation. That's a very different game that I'm seeing. What kind of impact are you seeing with this mix? Does it confuse the students, or it gives them that sense of clarity that you had once as a young professional.
That's our hope. So when people are coming in, when they're applying to study here, I'm sure they have all the standard reasons that I want a good education, I'm looking for a good curriculum, a good college life, and I want to ultimately have a successful career, right? That's the baseline.
The baseline. Everyone wants that.
On which education and everyone should want that, right?
Yes.
We don't want people to say, I want an education jiske baad mere ko kuch na karna pade. That's not a great education to have.
Yeah.
So that's a need that is real and that educational institutions must fulfill. But when the students come here, through the conversations, the culture, the curriculum that we have, some of them actively start feeling that, oh, I can now plan bigger. Career is definitely there, but I can be career plus something, right? And for others, it becomes a subconscious, kind of nurturing that happens. And our hope is that at some point in their life, they will also start feeling that now I'm ready to take the next leap. And we are actually seeing that some students within the first year, they are jumping on this idea that there are some problems to solve. I'm getting trained here to solve those problems. While solving those problems, I'll be able to either create my startup or pick up these skills and be able to work in this kind of a company. They've got that, inspiration and clarity. For others, they are focused that I'll learn well, I'll pick up these skills, I'll apply for, jobs in these sectors. And our belief is that at some point in their life, because they will have this kind of a peer group and context, they will also start believing that I can do larger problem solving, not just my own life's problem solving.
And there are specialty institutes like undergraduate programs and master's program now, which are specifically saying, hey, you come to the college with a problem and we'll help you solve the problem while you're here. How do those programs, I mean, what is your thoughts on programs like that?
I agree with the problem solving, approach to as a pedagogy. So in the classroom, we should just start with a problem statement. One of the things that we are now experimenting with is that rather than teaching everyone, through the same examples, can we teach the concepts and then bring in the examples from their own life to the class? So let's say there is a class of 40 people learning entrepreneurship, and I'm teaching a course on intro to marketing. Right. So in Rishi's case, if 40 students are working on 30 to 40 different projects, some are team members, some are working individually, those projects or startup ideas become the case examples for the class discussion. So I start with the idea of a product market fit as a concept, but then that idea is being analyzed through the examples of someone trying to open a footwear brand, someone trying to create an app around culture and heritage, someone trying to make a robot. So those are the kind of discussions that we're now enabling in our classroom.
And you're channelizing the thought process of students. Why don't you think about your own problem that you're trying to solve, or do you already have something in mind? So some might already come with an idea or a concept in mind. Some might think about an idea through this process.
So we did a course on systems thinking and environment in our first year. As an outcome of that, a group is now working on a startup idea around biodiversity. They want to make a digital database of Indian biodiversity, which surprisingly currently doesn't exist.
Wow.
So we should be able to put in the geo coordinates and get the biodiversity information of that area, and vice versa. We should be able to put that I am looking for neem, and I should be able to find out where all
oh wow.
Yeah, so that's an idea that our learners are working for. The genesis was that a topic of this, around this was discussed in the classroom, and the faculty encouraged and put that spark that think of how you can actually solve this problem through building something.
Wow.
And then the students came back that this is our idea, and the faculty is now enabling that.
But in a startup environment, everything is very agile. You pivot quickly and all. It's not really that easy to do as an institute, as a university, because I feel like there is a huge responsibility, and institutes have certain challenges to move with that agility. How do you bring that at Rishi Hood?
Yeah, so currently we are more of a startup than a university actually, because we're not very old as an institution. We ourselves are not very old, and our university is not very old. I think when a university becomes a team of 500 or 1,000 people, and when there are 10,000 students, that is when this legacy baggage starts
you
kicking
tend
in.
to become slow that way.
Yeah, and that is what we have to prevent. So in our DNA, I use a phrase here that culture alone scales. There's a kind of a operating principle that we are circulating in the Rishi team that whatever you want to do at 5,000 students or 10,000 students, do at 1,000 students as a culture. Once that becomes a
Set
culture,
the baseline now, so it continues
yeah.
even as you scale. The
And-
culture doesn't change.
and
Your
only
systems and
culture,
processes may change.
Correct.
But the
So,
baseline will not.
The logic is only culture will scale. If you try to make it a policy or a regulation or a framework, it may not scale. But once that is a culture, it doesn't matter whether you are 10 faculty in a department or 100 faculty in a department. The culture will scale.
I think that's very important, and I think more and more institutes and companies are giving a lot of emphasis on the culture, because, like you said, that truly is what thrives over time.
And that is why, in a lot of legacy institutions, even if they get 1,000 crore additional funding to do something, it becomes so difficult because the culture is not allowing to make that possible. That's why in bureaucracy, even if people with so much of passion and ideas get into, it becomes so difficult because there is a legacy culture that they are inheriting.
That basically almost holds you back.
Correct.
In that way. But what rituals do you follow at Rishi Hood to really imbibe that culture that will keep?
So in our
test
team,
of time will last?
For example, we have a monthly all hands where all the team members we come together for around 2 hours. We understand what is going on, what are our targets and as objectives to what are the problems that we are facing as an institution, and we have to solve for them. We celebrate our achievements. So this is one simple ritual that we have once in a semester. Otherwise, definitely once in a year, we also go on to retreats, like team retreats, where we do fresh thinking, debating from first principles that what is the right thing to be taught, what are the pedagogical practices one must follow. Then we have a very flat kind of an organization structure. So not just the team but also the students can easily meet me. It's kind of an open door system where we don't feel, oh, ye to CEO hai, ye vice chancellor hai, inse main kaise milunga. When you
students can walk into your office
students
anytime,
and faculty and our colleagues, so they don't feel that our seniors or our bosses are inaccessible. We don't have that boss and
again,
kind
part
of
of culture basically.
It's a culture. So when and I as a CEO also, I'm seen roaming around often. I am not someone who keeps sitting in my desk. Manish here is our cameraman. He'll tell that I am often into the marketing meeting. I'm sitting with them. I'm trying to analyze and understand what they're doing, and it keeps happening across various offices of our university.
I want to switch gears a little bit. Your background has a lot of deep-rooted, culture and Indian culture inbuilt in terms of the exposure you had early on, and I feel, I mean, obviously that's the ideology with which Rishi Hood is operating as well. How do you bring that Indian knowledge system into the university model, so to speak, and without having to make it feel ideological?
So it's a very interesting pedagogical model. It's it's also a knowledge itself in the sense of a curriculum. So some parts are part of the curriculum. So I was telling you about the course that we do on systems thinking and environment. Right? A lot of that systems thinking and environment comes from what is the Indian heritage telling us about environment. So if the heritage is telling us about plants have life and we are worshipping plants, it builds a mental model that I should not be exploiting my environment, right? It's a very applicable and sustainable way for sustainability. We can't be trading carbon credits and say that we are sustainable, right? Because we are finally exploiting and we financialized that thing. कि अभी मैंने carbon trade कर तो लिया तो मैं sustainable हो गया. But that's not how it.
It's more marketing than it's not real impact.
Yeah. So those are the foundational kind of concepts and inspirations that we draw. We have a course on understanding India, where it's a first semester course where we try to understand India as a mandatory course, as a civilization, as a culture, as a history, as a society, so that then whatever we do, either we build our startup or we go into research or we join a company, we should have the macro context of where we are operating, right? For example, the role that family plays in India is a very different perspective than in the developed world,
Western world, right? Absolutely.
So that's the difference that we want to bring to the awareness of the students, so that when they go out, they are well acclimatized. They are already have that acclimatization because they've grown up here.
Yeah.
But even an intellectual and conceptual understanding, that becomes very important. Then we have some formal research programs on Indian knowledge system. So we have a Center for Human Sciences,
Okay.
where we do research on topics like integral humanism, on what Sri Aurobindo has talked about, on what Swami Vivekananda has talked about, on Sanskrit as a language. One of our projects is to use Sanskrit as a tool for speech therapies, because Sanskrit is a very structured, the
lot of exercise, vocal exercise
correct.
is part of when you say
the speech of Sanskrit is a very structured, kind of speech, and there are tools we believe, if we can make it into therapies. So that's the research that is going on, that how can structured, practices be given to someone who is facing some
Speech
kind
correction.
of speech deficiencies, and it's a prevalent problem in children, especially young children, 2, 3, 4 years old. How do they correct their speech so that they don't feel that stigma that मैं कुछ गलत बोल रहा हूँ. They become underconfident, they become demotivated. So we are experimenting on that. There's a concept of Avdhan Kala, which is multiple concentrations. That as a person right now, I'm doing this podcast, but if I can look at, I can parallelly concentrate on 6 or 7 things, and I'm being able to make sense of all of them. So there are people who are actually trained in not just 6.
What do you call as multitasking? Is it
not just multitasking, but it's multi concentration?
Oh wow!
So I'm able to remember and cognize and process things that are happening. And there are people who have they're called Shatavdhanis, which means they've been able to concentrate on 100 things in parallel. So this has been kind of a art that they've learned through
centuries of
Guru Shishya format. We are trying to document it so that it can also become a framework available for more and more people to learn from. So those are some of the things that we are doing in Indian knowledge systems.
But in this highly polarized environment, how do you walk that fine line between cultural rootedness and being intellectually open?
So actually, there is no conflict between the two. Our culture teaches us to be intellectually open. That's the only way to discover truth, and that's what Swami Vivekananda also talks about when he says Rishihood. Those are the people who keep getting closer and closer to truth, and that's a process of intellectual uncovering. Layer by layer, we have to keep uncovering unless we reach the truth. So if we feel that we have to be intellectually closed to be culturally rooted, it's a incorrect understanding of the culture itself.
Yeah. It's kind of rare to have founders often speak publicly about emotional shifts, right? And I think you do it with honest simplicity and humbleness. So it's very inspiring one. And I've heard you speak in previous conversations about how your marriage or your father being a father changed you. Can you talk about that? Can you reflect upon those experiences? How that has changed the emotional framework for you as a person first, and then obviously as an education.
Just telling about some of the values that just because of being born in that kind of a family, I inherited. But my father also gave me a lot of confidence. So he's a self-made entrepreneur.
Okay.
So one basic thing that I picked up from him is that we can build our lives the way we want them to. Right? So when I go into college and when I'm figuring out whether to apply for a placement or not, the comparison is very obvious, because I've seen someone in my own family, that's my father, doing it. Right?
You have a benchmark already.
We have a benchmark. So he started with a job of I think 700 or 800 rupees salary. That was his first monthly salary. From there to become a successful entrepreneur. So I've seen that journey. So from a very humble lower middle class background to an upper middle class background. Then when I was myself preparing for IIT, it's a very anxious period because we don't know whether we'll get selected or not. He once told me that don't worry, अगर IIT में नहीं होगा तो हम एक और IIT बना देंगे. Right? So
wow.
So that's kind of an ambition, but it gives a confidence to a young kid कि मतलब IIT की इंस्टीट्यूशन है जो लोगों ने बनाया ना, तो ऐसा तो है नहीं कि दोबारा नहीं बन सकता. तो हम भी बना सकते हैं. And I didn't realize the import of that statement at that time, but it kind of helped in building Rishi with confidence.
Seeding, right? Right. I mean, and it didn't become an or for you; it became an and for you, which is amazing.
Yeah. So those are the kind of things.
As a founder, of anything that you're building, and obviously with something, when you're trying to do something unique and different, there is a lot of pressure constantly, and it comes professionally, personally. There are days where you feel like, God, long day, whatever. How does, what routines or mindsets you follow that we can learn from to sort of manage that?
I'm also kind of picking up, and my wife helps me a lot in figuring out these ritual and lifestyle decisions. So she is much more active and inspiring when it comes to maintaining a healthy and well-being kind of a lifestyle. Some things that we recently started doing is we've reduced our food intake. So we don't take we take only 2 meals a day. So I skip lunch, she skips breakfast, and lunch we would have just one fruit or something to keep our overall dietary intake to lower.
Is this with like a nutritionist guidance, or
right
you
now
made it on your own?
Right now we are just figuring out on our own. Of course, we then talk to a nutritionist to assure that
we're
it's
in
not
the right
something
direction. You're not starving yourself.
Correct. But actually, in our so you're talking about Indian knowledge systems. In our literature, both formal literature and folk literature, it is said that those who eat thrice, they are rogis. Rogis, they're kind of diseased. Those who eat twice are bhogis. They're eating more than those who eat once are yogis. So these yogis, bhogis, and rogis, this is a common thing in a lot of folk and formal literature.
Interesting. I've never heard of this. This is amazing.
So when we started doing this, and we told some people, so they said that this is actually prescribed as a
what
dietary
new
practice.
terms like intermittent fasting and all basically is all like a new version of our scriptures basically.
Then because we are parents to young children, we are also cautious about how what are we doing when we are spending time with them. So if my son and daughter are with me, but I'm constantly on my social media, it's a signal to them that this is how life is spent, right? So we have made a rule that we don't bring the phone inside our homes. We when we go back from office, we keep our phones next to the door, and just we walk around without devices inside the home.
You don't access them inside the house?
We don't access. I mean, if we have to, we go there and we do our work which is needed. If I have to message someone or have to check something, I go there, I do that near the door, and I'll come back.
But a call coming after hours, it doesn't need to be attended.
I'll take a call, but the one is to our own,
the constant, like every isolated moment we get, we like, okay, let me check what's happening. Correct. Rather than that, you're more thinking and
So we're spending time, we're playing some games, we're solving a puzzle. But importantly, one is it impacts our own psychology and well-being because we are not glued to a screen.
Absolutely.
And night time, it's extremely important because that helps in better sleep. And to a younger generation, we are giving we're not giving a signal that you and your phone are your best friends, right?
And what they see us doing is what they replicate. So I think that's immensely important, and something all of us as parents needs to be being more conscious and intentional about how we handle that.
And a lot of time that we spend on phone, especially after the work hours, they are very wasteful. There's nothing much coming out. We're not learning anything. We are not solving anything. It's just constant, random scroll.
Yeah. So certainly,
Then of course our morning routine of yoga, meditation. My wife is more regular than I, but those are the kind of things that we try to follow in our
those rituals help you stay composed and sort of get on with intentionality.
And choosing the right peer group, the right friend circle. It's a common saying that we become the average of the 5 people closest to us, right? So we have to carefully choose who are those 5
who
people.
you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah,
makes sense. Sahil, I'm getting a lot of inspiration from hearing how much what you're doing is there's a larger national mission behind it, right? And what we heard was that it's not just about the infrastructure, although that can be a barrier to entry. But more than that, it requires that imagination, right? That vision that comes to play. So help us unlock that. How can one go about formalizing the vision? They say ideas are a dime a dozen, but the magic is in execution. So how does one take that imagination and channelize it towards action, in your opinion?
Yeah. So in our case, we are kind of, I myself was obsessed with, seeing India becoming a developed nation, and that kind of galvanized a lot of other things that we started doing. So if there is an idea in someone's mind which kind of not lets as Abdul Kalam says, the dream is not what we see in sleep, but something that does not let us sleep.
Yes.
So if one gets that dream as their imagination, then other things start galvanizing towards that, because that's kind of an unstoppable force within you. So that became my unstoppable force. So if there is someone who is trying to build something, anything in education or outside, we have to figure out that one unstoppable idea or that imagination. About execution, my own learning has been it's a very iterative process. We start believing that this is the way things must be done, but when we start doing it, we keep evolving from that point. So the magic is in taking the first step and starting. A lot of people wait for something perfect to emerge and then start. But something perfect will not emerge. You'll have to start with something very, very imperfect and then keep building up from there.
So don't let perfectionist hold you back. Being a perfectionist hold you back.
So the phrase is that let perfect not be the enemy of good. Right? Start with something good and then you will reach perfection.
And let that be that maybe वो बोलते हैं ना कि maybe perfectionism is that constant pole that keeps changing.
Correct.
Like the by the time you reach to your perfect that you imagined a year ago, your pole for milestone for perfect will change, and that's
that can
what
happen
growth
because
is.
of internal reasons and also external reasons. We are not staying in a stagnant world, right? The world itself is evolving. So our idea of perfection and what we want to solve and how we want to solve will also keep evolving.
And if what we are imagining today, even in our conversation today, if India's best talent chose education as their career, what we would all want, how do you think that will change the dialogue for the next generation?
Automatically, I think we'll start asking deeper questions about who we are as individuals, as a society, as a workforce, as a nation. We keep debating about our R&D spend is very less. We keep debating that millionaires are leaving the country. We keep debating that our cities are broken, that we don't have top ranking institutions in the global rankings. So we see all these problems. We say that we are not a meritocracy. There's so many problems that businessmen has to face. Ease of doing business is not there. All these problems are basically, I call them the problems of talent systems. So in our country, we've not put an emphasis on building strong talent systems. So what I mean by talent systems is systems that identify, create, nurture, retain talent. In a country. Education is one strong part of it, but it also has to do with laws and regulations. It has to do with quality of life. It has to do with meritocracy. It has to do with ease of doing business. Basically, if there is a talented person and that person does not care about which country he belongs to, then can we become the best place for that person to?
So it's the larger ecosystem, the environment, which naturally promotes talent, where there is less friction along the way, and it sort of rather than being a friction, it sort of pushes the talent
forward.
from
it's a push forward rather than a pullback ecosystem. It's a push forward ecosystem. And that's how Silicon Valley
the Western world,
that's how a lot of development in China over the last 20 years has happened. That's how Israel in a small highly conflicted zone is able to be one of the most innovative nations of the world. So those are the kind of talent systems that we as a country have to build. So we are playing a very small role in that, but that's the larger revolution I want to see.
Can Indian universities be global leaders in your opinion?
Can Indian universities be
global leaders in your opinion?
Why not? So,
and what needs to happen?
So I think some part is for any institution that's kind of a subset of a nation. The nation has to be a global leader, and it then automatically pulls up
everything around it, the businesses, the institutes
around it. So I was telling earlier also, there's no point in being individually successful, or great in a not so great nation. It's true for universities also. If we just create a great star university here, but as a nation it's not so successful, then why would others come to study there? They're not coming only because of good education. They're coming because of a good prospect of life after that education, right? A lot of migration from here to the US or to Europe or to Australia is not happening because of the degree. It's happening because what would I do after that degree?
The degree.
Right?
Yes.
So that's the talent system ecosystem that we have to
Yeah, they call it the brain drain, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you protect that as a country?
Yeah. And not just protect that brain drain from happening. I would go one step further and say, how do we get in the
Pull
brain,
back, yeah,
get in the
absolutely.
brains from
Overseas.
other countries?
How do we make India more lucrative for people
yeah.
from outside to come and say, hey, this is the place, this is the environment I want to be thriving and developing something.
So these
new.
are intertwined. I mean, building great universities which become global leaders is a thing that will run parallel to building a great nation, right? And having good universities will help in building a great nation. Having better national systems will help in creating more and more good universities. So these things will keep happening in parallel. But I have no doubt that Indian universities can become global leaders. Whenever they do, it will be in parallel. Like India will become a global leader and Indian universities will become a global leader. We can't separate the two things.
They're very aligned with each other, intertwined with each other for it to happen.
And it's not just universities. Indian companies will become great companies. Indian scientists will become great scientists. Indian governments will become great governments, and Indian nation will become a great nation. And everything will work in parallel. And that's the forward path that we have to take as a nation.
Absolutely.
And I strongly feel that we are already on that path, and that's how we are seeing a lot of this change happening. This is the unveiling of the India story.
Absolutely. And I think someone said it that it's no longer that when are we going to arrive. In some ways we are arriving, and if this pathways continue and we keep having innovators like you at institutes, building institutes like Rishi Hood and the likes that are seeing in different parts of the country, there is no doubt in our minds that we will reach this aspiration of being a global leader in all aspects of or all walks of life. I want to, as we get closer to our conversation today, we have school owners, educators, parents listening. If they had 30 seconds of your time, right? What would you want them to reflect on? And I want it for all these three stakeholders, educators, parents, and children. What would you want them to be reflecting on when they hear you?
So educators, I have a hypothetical situation for them that as an educator, I'm teaching a class. If that class was not a part of an educational program, a curriculum, a university, a school, would someone still pay and attend my class?
Interesting.
Right? That's a kind of a litmus test that what I'm teaching is by itself, is that useful, meaningful, relevant for my audience? Right? That's a constant question that we should keep asking ourselves. As a parent, we must ask that ultimately, what are the things that we are looking for? Is it just a great placement and a great career, or is it something else? And then how can we make that atmosphere at our home so that my child picks up that aspiration?
That's powerful.
Not just a lot of forcing happens through the parents कि तू इसके लिए तैयारी कर ले नहीं तो तेरा कुछ नहीं होगा. So that's that's for them. For some it can become a a statement of inspiration, but for most I think it will be a demotivating thing. For the students, I think it's more important to build habits and conceptual frameworks and lifestyles and peer groups than really the practical skills that we learn in college, because those skills are transient. They will change, but those foundational habits and character and lifestyle will remain with us. And college time, school time is the best time to build it, because that stays with us for a very long time. So yeah, these would be my
and I'll just take this one step forward. That in this increasingly social media influenced world that we all live in, institutes want to flaunt their results, parents wants to flaunt their success of their children, and students want to flaunt their accomplishments, entrepreneurs want to flaunt their startup, right? It creates this sort of a false narrative of what success looks like or what success should be. And really, what they say is there is a real and there is a real, So what is your recommendation to our audience to really avoid that trap of, falling into that false narrative of what people show on the reels is very different than the reality of things. How do we get out of that?
So one step that we have taken is not watch reels, right? Put your phones away. It's better for your own health, for your mental well-being, and for this problem that you are facing. Otherwise, the world has kind of become a stage where we have to keep performing. Everything we do is a performance.
Yeah.
We have to really step down from that stage and live a life which is true and authentic
Yeah.
to oneself. So I think the antidote is just don't watch.
Staying
so many
away
reels.
is, some people get succumb to doing, fake it till you
Yeah,
make it
yeah.
sort of a mindset
Yeah,
sometimes. And
yeah. So
yeah.
I often say that there is no career in which everyone is successful, and there is no career in which no one is successful. Right. So
Well said.
if we are doing something which is very authentic to us, we will be successful.
Yeah.
If we do something which is kind of unstoppable passion,
Yeah.
if we don't get bored doing that, we ultimately will
Yeah.
become successful. So we should not feel कि उस करियर में वो उसको इतना पैकेज मिल गया तो चलो अपने बच्चों को या मैं भी वही करने लग जाता हूँ.
Yeah.
That's the comparison that comes from reels. I mean, reel देखते देखते कितने सारे लोग influencers बन गए.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But maybe in everyone we don't need so many influencers.
Fair. We need execution more than influencing
Yeah.
that way. But thank you so much, Sahil. This has been lovely. One tradition that we've recently started is for our guests to leave some thoughts and maybe some firing, burning question that you may have that you would like for our next guest to take on and answer.
Yeah.
So would love to hear what you would like
My
to.
burning question for people who are particularly in education is, how do we bring the best talent of the country to work in education? And that's what we should constantly try to answer. And that's the solution to education.
Absolutely, and I think that's a leading indicator. The more you bring in to the ecosystem, and more qualified and bolte hain na, purposeful people coming in rather than accidental educators.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. So education being the first choice, career choice, rather than being the last choice. I think that's the shift we want to achieve.
Got it. We'll be happy to bring that on. Thank you so much, Sahil, for your time today. This has been a lovely conversation. I got to know so much more about you as an education entrepreneur, and for our audience to learn about the ideologies and philosophy that you're doing at Rishi Hood. It's truly inspiring, and I wish for people to look at this and really take on that message of building the nation. And you being an open source example for others to follow, and have more people inspired to really take that journey of starting an education institute and contribute towards the nation. So thank you again.
Thank you. It was a very interesting and provocative
Keep building and stay inspired. This is your host Ankur Gupta signing out. I'll see you in the next episode.